Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our first video edition of Unfold. You already know Unfold is Threefold's bi-weekly LinkedIn newsletter, and we're really excited to build that further with these quarterly Unfold Fireside Chats that recap major industry events from over the past quarter. Everyone consumes information differently, so we're really happy to offer these on-demand videos on Threefold's resources page as another way to stay connected with Threefold and stay updated on all things retail media. So joining me today to do just that is a really excellent panel of some of Threefold's brightest stars. We'll start with Sam Knights. He's the CEO of SMG, the entire SMG agency network, which includes Threefold, our sister agency Capture, as well as Plan Apps, the retail media operating system that underpins all of our retail media networks. Hey, Sam.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Also joining is Sean Crawford. He's Threefold's managing director. He's been with the SMG agency network for more than a decade now and leads Threefold in North America. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Connor. Good to be here.
Nice to have you. And then finally, we have Amber Roberts. She's partnership director, also on our North American team. So she helps guide our team's efforts working with retailers in the US and in Canada. Good to have you, Amber.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm Connor Perrette. I work with our marketing team to kind of promote all of our great work here at Threefold. So I'm really excited to moderate this discussion today, all about the first quarter and kind of the state of the retail media industry at the first point, the first stopping point of the year. So to begin, I have a little icebreaker. Sam, you and I were talking a few weeks ago in the office about cookies. And in that conversation, you kind of said, let's stop at the beginning and define what cookies are, and let's set the conversation off on that foot. So I want to do that with this discussion as well, because I think we'll talk a lot about the events we've attended over the first quarter. And when you attend those events, you realize that maybe not everyone is operating with the same definition of retail media. So let's start with that and get our definitions of retail media. But because it's threefold, there's a little twist. So we like to keep things in threes. So I want to go down to all three of you and talk a little bit about what your three words are that you would define retail media as. Amber, you're up on my screen right now. Let's start with you. What are your three words? What does retail media mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I am going to say omnipresent commerce catalyst.
Okay.
Um,
Those are big
and
words.
I think yes, and I'm going to say that because we typically talk about retail media and it being retail, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just a retailer that's implementing retail media. You can get into the travel, you can get into ride sharing, quick commerce. Like there's a lot of areas, like the hotel groups, property management groups that can really get into retail media and commerce media.
Lots of opportunities. I'm sure some of those will come up later in our discussion. Sean, I see you next. What are your three words?
Yeah, it's a good one. There's a lot of talk about what retail media is out there. For me, it's pretty simple, though. It is in-store, on-site, and off-site media. Any of those channels can be retail media channels. Ultimately, in my view, retail media is media. So there you go. Three words.
Lo Love it. Sam?
Yeah, similar to Sean's actually, except I chose three different words. Owned by the retailer, operated by the retailer, or using their first-party data. But that's obviously more than one word.
That's okay. We can. It's a compound word. We'll add some hyphens between it.
Thanks. Yeah, but those are the three areas I think that retail media encompasses. So obviously that includes, as Sean says, the store, on-site, off-site, using that data that they have for their loyalty schemes to really start to target efficiently, all the way through the funnel now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, well, really exciting, I think, is kind of how we view retail media in general. Lots of opportunities. I think Amber kind of calls those out with her three words as well, that there's obviously a ton of opportunities now, but so many opportunities down the pipeline. So I'm excited to kind of dig into those in this discussion. I want to move on now to talk about all the events we've been at in the first quarter. It's been a really busy first quarter for all of us on this call from an event standpoint. Speaking at events or just attending events, especially over here in North America, we started the year off in a really big way at NRF, Retail's big show. There was an entire day dedicated to retail media networks that was put on by NRF and StrataCash. We had 2 different stage slots. Leila Furv, our Chief Commercial Officer, came over, as did Dean Harris, head of Co-op Media Network, to talk about how we've approached retail media at Co-op. Amber, you were also on stage at NRF to talk about leveraging the store. So that was a really exciting way to kick off the year. But then we quickly moved on. We went up to Canada for Retail Media Summit Canada in Toronto. Sean, you were at that one. On stage, kind of talking about the possibilities of retail media. We're working right now with retailers in the US and Canada. So much right now, these events are in the US. So it was really exciting, I think, for us to actually talk to some of these retailers on their home turf about the state of retail media up north. And then after that, Sean and Sam, you went to San Francisco, so back to the US, all the way over to the West Coast for Ramp Up, all about data collaboration, that event from LiveRamp. Excited to talk about that. Shoptalk happened not long after that. Las Vegas, of course, a very busy event, another really big retail tentpole event. But for us, we were really excited because we had our retail media VIP dinner. That's something we're looking to replicate at later events this year because it was so successful. And we also sponsored the retail media OG party. So again, at these really massive events, we're still finding ways to center retail media, which is really exciting because retail media is obviously so important to retail right now. Amber, you appeared at some smaller events. You were invited to speak at PLMA, Private Label Manufacturers Association's annual leadership meeting, to kind of talk about the rise of retail media and the opportunity at private label. You also spoke at Sky's Shoppable event to talk about growing a retail media network from the ground up, something we have a lot of experience with here at Threefold. And then Sean and Sam, you recently attended the Ascendant Network's Retail Media Bootcamp. Sam, you were on stage talking about kind of cookie deprecation and opportunities to use retailers' first-party data. So a really wide range of events over the first quarter. We have these major events as well as these small, more intimate events focused on the retail media community. I'd love to just kind of go around in a circle here and talk about biggest takeaways or what stood out from those events in the first quarter. Sam, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, great. I mean, there was so much to take in at all of the different events. And actually, I think during the course of the last few months, the conversation has moved forward significantly. I think when we started the year, we were talking a lot about measurement standards, about technology, about the use of first-party data. And they're all still very relevant, but they've now become almost expected. And I feel that in the last conference we went to, the conversation moved on quite significantly into more of the creative elements of retail media, of how we can start to use personalization to offer really exciting customer experiences. How retailers are starting to link their loyalty schemes to value adds. So we talked about how the Co-op, for example, are linking theirs in the UK to Co-op Live, but also how Amazon are using some of their live entertainment and sports channels to increase the benefit for customers. And obviously the same is true of Walmart and increasingly in others as well. And so I think the conversation for me has moved further into how we use the basics of the kind of science of retail media to start to move it towards the art of retail media. And that's a really exciting conversation because that leads into my heart ground, which is all about how we do marketing and how we develop campaigns with the media channel. So that's been a really cool advancement. And then the other big thing that has really come to the fore is AI and how that's going to affect not only the way that we do things with retail media, but the way that the shopper shops in the first place. We talked about robotic shoppers and how people have personal assistants and how they'll pick where they purchase it from based on different inputs. And so just the very thought of how that's going to fundamentally shift the retail experience, I think is an interesting conversation, which I'm sure will be had a lot more over the next 12 months too.
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff there. Sean, what about you? What are your takeaways?
Some good ones there from Sam. I think for me, one of the great things to hear a lot of people talking about over the last quarter has been the importance of retail media's impact on the end shopper and the end customer. Fun fact about Threefold, the name actually comes from doing the right thing for the retailer, doing the right thing for the brand, and then doing the right thing ultimately for the shopper. Those three things, power of three and Threefold. I think for me, the most important one in there is the shopper. This should not be about just pure ad sales. The retailers who are doing this really, really well, the ones who are creating customer-centric campaigns and campaigns that enhance that shopping experience and then drive ultimately loyalty into their retail environment. And in some of the events that we've been to, this is probably really the first kind of season, so to speak, of events that I've heard people really talking about how they want to enhance the customer experience, working with their advertising partners to do that. So really pleased to see that's coming through on the stage, but equally in the kind of community of retail media. And I hope that can transcend through for the rest of the year because it's something we're really passionate about at Threefold.
Yeah, both Sam and Sean, I feel like you both are talking about how the conversation is now finally changing, and we're hearing signs of what the next era of retail media has in store, which is exciting. Amber, what about you? What are your takeaways from the events you've attended?
Yes, some of the events that I attended, like you said, were a little bit smaller. So the audience had a bit of a different understanding of retail media. So, I just want to mention too that we've gone out in a big way this year, because we managed to snag some of these, the speaking slots at, NRF, at Ascendant, at PLMA, at Sky. I think what's really exciting is hearing people at these events saying like, "Oh my gosh, I know who Threefold is." And thinking last year, we were pretty much like flying under the radar. So the fact that like our name is out there now, I think that's one of the most exciting things to hear. But what's important too, it's not just about just showing up at these events. It's really making an impact and helping people wrap their heads around retail media, how they can harness it in their businesses. And from my perspective, it was really about bringing those amazing insights from our partners overseas, especially on hot topics like in-store media, which is going to be taking off here, here in North America, not only from a digital perspective but also an analog perspective.
Yeah, well, great insights there. I'm glad you mentioned in-store retail media because the next portion of this discussion is broken out into three major themes that we've seen from the event circuit in the first quarter. And the first one is retail media in store. That NRF event at the beginning of the year that was put on by NRF and Stratacache was called What's in Store for Retail Media Networks. They just kind of repeated that event earlier in the month in London as well. So the store is really a big focus. But I want to just kind of start from the beginning on that. Why is in-store media so important? Sean, I want to start with you on that.
Yeah, good question and a good place to start. I think for me, why in-stores is so important is that's where the majority of sales are happening. For the majority of retailers in this space, it could be 80, even 90%, maybe even 95% of their total sales are going through stores. So it makes a lot of sense to therefore be targeting where you've got the most footfall, the most traffic, and the most sales happening with your advertising partners to create those brilliant experiences that I was just talking about for the shopper. I think that in-store environment is also really malleable to create experiences that you just can't create in a digital environment. There's some great examples globally where people have created some great campaigns in store that require physical touch points and interaction with shoppers. And whilst absolutely we're a digital first world and we all carry a cell phone in our pocket, you just really can't beat that in-store interaction. And that's what makes retail special. So for me, that's why in-store is such a focus. And it's great that both America and Canada now are focusing on the in-store retail media opportunity.
Sam, what are your thoughts? Kind of the same as Sean's, or anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I mean, Sean's pretty much covered it there. I mean, it's such a massive opportunity because of the sales numbers. But also, I guess what I would add is that we always knew when we, in a former life, I used to run the marketing for Gillette, and we always knew that the fastest way to drive awareness of a new product was by having really strong in-store presence. It was faster than any TV channel, any outdoor channel. It drove awareness faster than anything else. And I think that's the other piece of the puzzle that we're starting to see in the conversation is that actually, because of the footfall in store, because of the store locations, retail media can act as an awareness channel as well as a conversion channel. And then when you add in Sean's point, which was very well made about the experience as well, suddenly you've got a method of using the store to drive awareness, engagement, and conversion. And that means that it's a really powerful opportunity for brands and for retailers alike.
Amber, what about you? What's your perspective as someone who's obviously worked with North American retailers in former roles? How does in-store kind of factor into the whole equation in your perspective?
Yeah, I think in North America, the difference between North America and Europe, it's a little nuanced. So both regions are obviously prioritizing, the in-store experience, but North America, I think, is focusing a lot on, kind of like technology-driven solutions, such as like digital signage, interactive displays, things like that. Whereas Europe, they emphasize kind of these experimental elements like immersive displays and in-store takeovers that really stand out to the customer. So digital is still very relevant, don't get me wrong, in Europe, but Europe's also very comfortable using, kind of like those more analog media options to drive sales and loyalty and personalization across the, true omnichannel shopping experience.
Yeah, Sean, what do you think about the differences between North America and the UK and Europe in terms of in-store retail media?
I think the interesting point with Europe is that it really started retail media in the store first. So it means because of that, it's slightly more advanced in that space, either by using, as Amber was saying, that more traditional format, that analog type media, a lot of cardboard, but cardboard used in a really interactive and interesting way through the like floor vinyl store takeovers, the POS at sale, all the way through to then the digital elements that are increasingly coming through. It's been great to see, obviously, the advancements in audio, programmatic now coming into that space, and the digital screen signage, both at the front of the store as well as then at physically the touch point and around the store too. So it's really creating a dynamic and interactive experience. But I think what Europe has got great is that perfect hybrid model of cohesive campaigns in a store that are really joined up because of the way a retail media network has been established. So by the retailer working hand in hand with their merchants, with their marketing teams, and with their retail media teams, they're creating really cohesive campaigns that link up to that store journey and then are amplified through digital channels, either on their own platforms, on offsite platforms like Meta, or on kind of mobile and display. So it's really connected, and that omnichannel route for advertisers to activate is really coming to life in Europe. I think in the US, it's still a little bit disjointed. It can at times feel like there's lots of competing messages going on in a store. And it'd be really interesting to see how that evolves over the coming year with this focus on the customer and also the increasing digitalization, as Amber was saying, of these stores. It's great to see some of the top tier retailers really investing in their store network, modernizing them with these digital opportunities. And as long as that is tied together really well with the traditional analog opportunities like we've seen in Europe, I think there can be great success for more growth for those retailers and their networks.
For retailers who are on this journey to add more retail media to their store to really focus on that consumer experience in store, how can they accelerate their journey? Sam, I guess I'll ask you first. Is it focusing right now on digitization, or is it saying what can we do right now with analog retail media?
Yeah, it's totally both. And I think a lot of it actually, interestingly, Connor, is structural, right? Because when you're dealing with offsite, especially, and to a certain degree on-site, you're not disrupting the customer experience as much because it's relevant for that specific person that's going onto the site, or if it's offsite, it's actually not disrupting the shopper experience at all. Whereas in the store, I think you're very conscious that whatever you do needs to contribute to that shopper experience and at least not detract from it, right? And so there needs to be a structural change where the retail media networks are working much closer with some of the in-store elements of a retailer. So certainly the merchandising department, but also some of the in-store experience departments, and also thinking about creative and branding to make sure that it feels cohesive with everything else that's going on. And so I think one of the bits that we don't talk about enough is how you structure a retail media network within a retailer to allow for that coordination that then enhances the in-store experience in a very holistic way. But when you start to bring in elements of digital screens, that allows you to do things that are more similar than you would do online. It allows you to target personally, it allows you to change the message quickly, it allows you to do things by day part, which makes that a little bit easier, but then that's a lot more expensive. So it's, I guess the question is in two parts. It's how do you structure your RMN to make sure that it works internally to provide a cohesive store experience where brands are contributing to that store's equity? And then how do you use technology to enable yourself to act more dynamically in a more agile way that suits the customer's needs when they're actually shopping?
Amber, what advice would you give to a retailer in the US or Canada who wants to focus more on the store?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say definitely can still continue on that digital journey, because digitizing the store can unlock a myriad of potential. It creates that seamless omnichannel experience, to enhance kind of those personalized promotions and like advertising. But digital also, from an operational perspective, can bring consistency and efficiency and execution. Digital in store, it kind of just enables retailers to gather that valuable customer data, helps optimize inventory in real time, deliver hyper personalized shopping messages that kind of bridge the gap between, online and offline. And I say like continue down that digital journey because that's where a lot of people are going. You know, Omnichannel and thinking about omnichannel and ensuring that your retail media proposition is not just digital, I think is something else that I would recommend to a lot of the North American retailers because it has been so digitally focused for so long, whether that just be in store and or inside, on site and on off site, or putting digital screens in stores. Like think about those omnichannel and those analog methods that bring that entire journey to life. So if you to Sean and Sam's points, you kind of feel this disjointed messaging, this disjointed journey because you've got essentially two teams thinking about how they're going to execute it, and they're not always cohesive and they're not always talking to each other. So that's why it kind of feels that way. So if you bring the teams together, if you ensure that these are like true partnerships and that you are putting the customer first, that's where you can create these beautiful experiences and personalized experiences for the customer regardless of how they're shopping.
Yeah, Amber, you keep mentioning this word omnichannel. That is the next section that I want to get into here. So that works really well. Sean, I want to ask you, how can retailers create truly omnichannel experiences that reach shoppers across their path to purchase? We hear a lot and we know that the path to purchase isn't linear anymore. So how do you create experiences that reach shoppers across their journey?
I think all campaigns need to be omnichannel now. I think it's really rare that you do a campaign that is in just one silo or one vertical of media. And when I think why that is, it's because I think about how I shop and how everyone else shops. You don't shop at a set time of day anymore or on a set day of the week. We're kind of always shopping. And that's through the evolution of digital and how it's made it much easier to shop when we want to shop, whether that is on the sofa at home while we're in front of the television, or whether that's on our commute to work, or when it's actually on a kind of high street retail environment. And because we're always on the go and always in that kind of shopping mindset, we've got to be able to talk to people wherever they may be and wherever they decide to do that shopping. And so for that reason, for advertisers and retail media networks, it's really important that they're approaching things in an omni-channel way to ensure that they're capturing that moment to talk to someone about their product and then hopefully convert them at the right moment in a digital or in-store format. So that omni-channel experience they should be focusing on. And I hope that as all retailers are looking at their inventory, they're making sure that they've got a really good, robust offering across that in-store, on-site and off-site environment.
Sam, anything to add?
No, again, Sean's covered it really well. I guess what I would say is we talk a lot about the kind of the path to purchase collapsing, the funnel collapsing, but maybe the conversation that's missing is that what we need to do to help customers get from not being aware of a product to buying a product still remains the same, right? There are still barriers that you need to overcome. You need to overcome an initial awareness barrier. You need to then overcome a consideration barrier. And then ultimately you need to probably overcome a price barrier. And so you need to do those pieces of communication probably in slightly different places on that shopper journey, whether that be through social, through digital when you're exploring, all the way through to the buying point when you're talking about value. And so whilst the funnel has collapsed, what you need to do to the customer to get them over the line hasn't changed. And so that's why you need multiple channels to do it. And that's what we mean by omnichannel. You know, if you only do one part of that barrier, you're not gonna overcome. No point talking about price if you don't even know what the product is in the first place, right? And so that's why omnichannel is important. And so campaigns that don't run across multiple channels, that don't have different messaging hierarchies, are simply less effective. And so that's the only piece that I'd add to Sean's discussion. And you know, we see from the results that when you use multiple channels with the right messaging hierarchy, you see a stronger return on investment. And you know, obviously that makes sense for the reasons that we just talked.
Yeah, I want to ask about one of those channels, CTV. We're hearing a lot about it this quarter, and more we're hearing about it, especially as linear TV is kind of falling off as the preferred method to reach consumers. CTV is this modified way that a lot of retail media networks are now making part of their toolkit. Amber, you just contributed to a paper for the IAB about CTV, and I think it specifically talked about kind of how we've used CTV at Boots. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think about CTV and how it plays into retail media, and what are the possibilities there?
Oh gosh, there's endless possibilities. Connected TV, you know, it's kind of a burgeoning opportunity for retail media. So it allows brands to reach consumers, you know, in their living rooms through, you know, targeted ads on streaming platforms like Roku, Apple TV, you know, all of the different apps that you now have to purchase separately. You know, CTV offers advanced targeting capabilities and measurable ROI. So when we talk about the, you know, when I said earlier about keep expanding that digital journey, retailers should be expanding their digital journey. It includes CTV. You know, I think looking forward, there's so many possibilities for future applications of this. You know, we're already starting to see like these interactive, like shoppable ads you know, with QR codes and things like that. I expect this to kind of evolve and make it even more shoppable, like going directly to the customer's website or the retailer's website. They can pop it in their cart and you can buy it directly from your television. I envision it, you know, evolving into like augmented reality experiences too. So how are we, you know, how are we combining AR with our CTV experience, you know, and that continued integration of e-commerce platforms. So making our TVs more shoppable, being able to shop directly from the commercial that we're seeing on our, you know, on the streaming device that we're watching.
Sean, Sam, any hot takes on CTV?
Do you want me to go first, Sean? Yeah. I think it's such a cool opportunity because, you know, the problem with TV in the past was that it was relatively inefficient because you couldn't target it as well as you could with digital channels. Now, obviously with CTV, you can target it on a one-to-one basis. And you can still use it to do the awareness job, the engagement job. You can do some really cool creative elements to it. But now you can see what happens after a consumer sees that ad. You can do a closed loop measurement and you can understand, did they go on to buy? And if they did, then I don't need to target them again. You can go ever more efficient. And so I think there's it's a really exciting opportunity for brands and for retailers actually, that we can now link that first party data all the way up the funnel and then measure it in a closed loop way. It's honestly the holy grail. I mean, if you'd have told me 15 years ago at Gillette that you could do that, I wouldn't have believed you. So it's a really exciting opportunity.
Anything to add, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's all been said. I think the biggest thing for me is that it connects this whole part of the omnichannel journey that we're talking about. You know, if we're talking to people in their homes when they're watching their Apple TV, or maybe they're on the move with their Apple TV, that's such a great opportunity to then connect through with that loyalty data, that first party data into then social, and then making sure that we're retargeting them perhaps through display and then bringing that onto the website and then bringing that into the store. It's all one really strong piece, like connected TV, to then factor into the rest of your media mix. So it's great that that is now possible, and it's amazing how far media has come in such a short space of time. It's just crucial that it's part of that omnichannel mix.
Sam, you mentioned closed loop attribution. At the top of the call, you said that obviously we're moving away from measurement as one of the only conversations we're having, but measurement is still really important to brands. How is closed loop attribution possible, right? When thinking about omni-channel experiences and how that path to purchase really isn't linear anymore. How do we measure the success of campaigns? Sean, do you want to take that?
Yeah, great question. I think first thing to say about that is that measurement is one of the most important parts of a retail media network. It is so important to show advertisers what hasn't worked, because I think if you just show the good stuff and not necessarily the things that haven't gone to plan, how can we improve that? How can we make it better? How can we drive more top line sales? So for us at Threefold, it's very much about showing what has worked, but more importantly, what hasn't worked. And we do that on the closed loop attribution by, if we use one of our retail partners as an example, by linking up to their loyalty card programs and being able to show that through the media that we've built, using that loyalty card data and building the audiences off that loyalty card data in a privacy compliant way, we've then been able to associate them in an ID and then track back when they swipe that loyalty card either on the website or in the store, to see whether they have responded to an ad, hopefully then by buying a product. So it really helps us now with the technology that's in place to close that loop into what Sam was saying earlier, understand if people are receiving the ads, if they're engaging with the ads, and then if they're ultimately closing to a sale. So it's amazing how much technology has gone on, but I would stress that even if closed loop isn't possible, offering measurement is the most important thing you can do across all your media so that we can get better and smarter and minimize media wastage moving forward.
Sam, anything to add there?
No, I agree with Sean as always, it seems. But I think the point there is that measurement is the most crucial part of retail media, and it's the reason retail media is so exciting. So although the conversation's moved on from it, it's still absolutely critical, and is a table stake in doing anything in this space. The technology allows us to link unique identifiers across the full funnel, so we can understand from a loyalty scheme where that end user consumes the media, sees the impression, acts upon the media, and then goes on to buy. So that's what we mean by closed loop. And that has huge implications for what else we can do in the future, right? Not only from a media targeting point of view, but in terms of how we understand customers, how we understand how they shop, how we understand how they consume media, and how we understand what media provokes what actions. And so I think there's a future conversation which is much more based on insight rather than pure data, about how retail media affects short and long-term value of brands. We've recently concluded a study with one of the big CPGs here in the UK with Boots that actually shows that differing types of media served to customers results in different long-term lifetime value. So certain customers that engage further up the funnel will come back more frequently to buy that product than people that have just engaged with a shelf edge, for example. And so there's some really interesting insights that we can start to gather from this measurement.
There were some mentions in those answers about first-party loyalty data. Just a couple questions I want to ask in this final section, all about leveraging first-party data as we get closer to the deprecation of cookies. I know now it seems it's delayed again, but we're going to get there eventually. Sam, you just talked about this at Ascendant. What really is the potential of loyalty data here to brands in terms of like targeting opportunities, especially compared with the cookie?
Yeah, I mean, the cookie was always a little bit blunt, it was based on browsing behavior. And, we've all been there, haven't we? When you've accidentally clicked on something and then it follows you around the web for the next 2 weeks, or at least we say we accidentally clicked on it, There's there's and so it was a very blunt tool, whereas loyalty card data, especially for those people like Sam's Club and others that have had this data for a long time, is really in depth. It shows progression over life stage, it shows interests, and it's increasingly paired with browsing behavior. And then when it becomes really interesting is then when you can do data alliances that match these customer identifiers across different vectors. So things like travel, for example, or things like leisure. And so then you start to build a really interesting picture on likes, dislikes, hobbies, interests, all of which allows you to serve more personalized advertising to that person, and then hopefully serve them with stuff that they really want, and therefore go on to buy. And so loyalty card data is one part of a bigger puzzle, which allows us to create more personalized, more relevant advertising, which is great for the customer because it means you get chased around the web less with stuff you're not interested in. But also great for the advertiser because it's much more efficient and drives a better return on investment too.
Amber, I want to ask you, where do you think this is going? At the top of this discussion, you mentioned how it's not just retailers getting in on these media networks, and I think it's any business that offers this loyalty information to brands. So that's probably part of the answer, but I'm curious in a retail context and then outside of it, where do you think this loyalty data is moving toward in terms of offering these opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, any place where a customer is interacting with something that they are purchasing or using, I think that first party data is and loyalty data is going to be very significant. You can use loyalty data to, like Sean and Sam mentioned, better target and personalize the capabilities, help advertising campaigns become more effective, segment audiences based off of past purchasing history, their interests, like you said. But I really do think that once the cookies gone away, retail media networks and commerce networks are going to have to rely on the different loyalty data just to kind of help them optimize and measure campaign effectiveness, drive those conversions both online and offline. um, it's going to be the way that they can tap in and make sure that they have those really hyper personalized experiences that people are they're coming to expect, and they're going to expect it even further in the future.
Yeah, good insights there. Sean, anything to add before we close that section out?
You know what? I think everyone summed it up. I think the power of first party data actually is what's going to really actually mean that it doesn't matter cookies are going away. We shouldn't be fearful of cookies going away. And I think that's actually the one thing I would leave on this conversation. We shouldn't fear cookies going away. It's a good thing that they're going away. It's gonna be a better customer experience and a better experience for all of us interacting with media. So retail media offers that evolution and something we should all be excited about.
Yeah, good thoughts there. Change can be scary, but sometimes it's good in the long run. Maybe this will be one of those instances. I think it will.
Definitely.
All right, well, that was a really great discussion. Before I let you guys go, we have a little rapid fire round here to close us out. I want to ask a series of 3 questions. The questions have a blank at the end, and it's up to you three to kind of fill in the blank. The first one, the biggest misconception about retail media is what? Let's start with you, Sam.
That it's only digital. Don't forget
Sean,
about the
Mine was also going to be that it's only digital. It's omnichannel.
Amber.
My answer was also digital. We're very consistent across this panel. No, you can still have an extremely successful campaign with tremendous ROI and it be analog.
I'm glad we're in agreement there. Next one, besides retailers, the biggest opportunity for media networks is in blank. Amber, let's start with you.
I would say the next one that's going to be using commerce is I think it's going to be probably in travel. So it's going to be the hotels, the airlines, they're going to be leveraging they've been collecting first party data for their customers for a very long period of time with their customer profiles and everything else. I think travel is going to be the next area for media networks.
Yeah, lots of information there. Sean, what do you think?
I would have said travel, but just to be different, I'll say like finance and banking. There's been some of those kind of corporations in the news recently looking to explore this space. So it'll be interesting to see how that expands this year.
Sam?
Yeah, travel for me is the one you bob on. But I think this, mix that in with leisure. And like I said earlier, you've got a very interesting alliance.
And to close us out here, the next era of retail media will include what? Sam, we'll start with you.
Everything.
Everything.
I think retail media will become just part of the media landscape. It will be like digital. 10 years ago, as a brand manager, you had a digital department. If you don't know digital now, you can't be a brand manager. It's going to be the same for retail media. It's going to be a part of the fabric of what we do in marketing and media. So yeah, everything would be my answer.
Amber, the next era of retail media will include?
I would have to say something similar to Sam. Like, it's not just going to be retail media. It's just going to be, it's not going to be omnichannel. It's going to be just commerce. It's not going to matter how the customer's buying, if it's in store, online, offline, whatever. It's just going to be commerce going forward. Really blurring, like omnichannel. It's just shopping.
Sean, what do you think it'll include? It's kind of hard to follow up everything, but any thoughts?
That is hard to follow, but I will say creativity. I think retail media will get a lot more creative in its execution, and that can only be a good thing for the shopper.
It's a great answer.
Thank you.
Lots of great answers. I really appreciate this discussion. That'll kind of round us out and bring us home. So thanks again, everyone, for this great chat. Looking forward to meeting here again and doing this in a few months after the second quarter. As a reminder, for retail media news and updates from Threefold in the meantime, be sure that you're subscribed to Unfold on LinkedIn to get those bi-weekly updates, context, and insights that you can't get anywhere else. Coming up, we've got some exciting events. We'll be doing a little something at Cannes, and then we'll be in Chicago for the Path to Purchase Institute's Retail Media Summit. So we'll have more to share on both of those events coming up soon, and we'll have more exciting updates from Threefold. So be sure to stay tuned to threefold.team as well as our platform on LinkedIn. Thanks again to the panelists for a really great discussion today, and we'll see you next time.